Hello, guys, and welcome to another episode of What If Civilization Started Over. In the last episode, we saw a couple of events happen, such as a small war breakout over here, a, a decent amount of lore dropped with those guys, and we also saw some things happening out here in the Mediterranean dealing with the religion. If you did not see the last episode, well, why are you here? Um, well, go watch the last episode if you didn't. But anyway, let's get started with this episode. All right. So, one of the big things about last episode had to deal with Southern Arabia right here, or really just the Middle East, Southern Middle East. But we saw a decent sized war break out between the Great Empire and Purple Team after supposedly these guys are trying to reform the RPGAU just kind of like this. They went from however many countries they originally had, which I totally remember, to now six, being this Yemen country, Emirates, the Kuwait, Persia, Pakistan, and here we have Tibet. Um, but we saw like but these two they have good relations, and these four they have good relations ish. But these four and these two don't get along with each other. Um, which is and that definitely doesn't help. After now we have Myanmar, India, and Blue Australia joined the Triangle Alliance, and things are just globally things are starting to rise. After World War II, a couple predominant powers came into play. Obviously, the Great Empire has always been a predominant power, but we saw the Great Lakes empires finally start to catch up with with the old countries. They had been number one before, and now they are number one once again. They are the second oldest country on this map, e- behind Ethiopia. But let's not turn this off for long, as we have some power rankings to get to. So, off the bat, and I just erased the map for the map. Off the bat, we can get rid of this down here, and we can get rid of all the other power rankings because there's definitely quite a bit of changes going on. Alright. Alright. Well, I think that is all the power rankings though right there. So now let's actually get into power rankings. Alright, number one, we do see the Great Lakes Empire retaining its place. Number two, same thing with the Great Empire. Number three is also still Ethiopia. The top three did not change. However, number four is now Korea. Number five, we see going over to America. Number six is still China. Seven, we now come down to the down to Sumatra or Indonesia. All right. Number eight is now the Switzerland. Number nine is um Adriatic Union. I totally remembered that. Number 10 is Russia. 11, we actually see going over to the Nordic country. It, they they really shot up after getting a lot of land out of Finland. It turns out somebody had actually really developed the Nordic Peninsula and a lot of their colonies. The number 12 we head over to Myanmar for. 13 we see Persia getting back into the ranks after the RPGAU fell. Number 14 we come out here and down to this Ghana nation, which for whatever reason has no capital. Unless, oh, oh there's our 14. In 15, we come back over to the China region as we see South, the new South China is in 15th place. Up in 16th, we see Catalonia. In 17th, we see Gibraltar. 18th, West France. In 19th, we see Mexico. And lastly, 20th is actually West Africa. Alright, so there's our top 20 rankings. Alliances do not change other than the Diamond Alliance now automatically becoming in 5th. Alright, so now we can actually get to map changes. So we're going to head over back here as we see this war is starting to escalate. So obviously the war started out West Mexico invaded Texas, Texas invaded Mexico, Mexico invaded West Mexico. But now we see another country getting involved. Who would you think it would be? Well, it's going to be the Caribbean nation. They, for whatever reason, vividly believe they're the true, like, they're the true, like, first colony of North America. First area that was settled, even though that was in Florida. But the Caribbean nation has, is easily overpowering these guys. And, yes, this is Swiss territory. Wait, no, that's Mexican, isn't it? No? Oh, now that's Caribbean. I thought that was Swiss. If it was, I was going to give it to Switzerland, but that is not Swiss. So, Caribbean having a wonderful time. They've taken over Cozumel, the island Cozumel, and they're now beginning to make landings on the Yucatan. And if you're somehow wondering why the Caribbean nation is being able to do this, well, they have a best friend that's in the top 10 strongest countries. But Mexico is also having its own successes as it pushes up into the West Mexican territory or Baja California territory, whatever you want to call this country. It's kind of in it. I don't know, but they're seeing a lot of success, so much so that they're beginning to invade Texas as well. But Texas is also seeing its own successes it begins to push deep into Mexico along the coastline, and uh, well, if it's not already clear, all of these countries are having some outside help. Decide like these guys are fighting a three front. They're fighting pretty much a two-front war. They've got the West Front, they've got the South Front, they've got their invasion even. So America will also join this war, and they declare war on all three of these two to stake their, or all three of these three to stake their claim. However, if they declare war on the Caribbean nation, it's pretty much going to start a whole nother world war, and especially that's going to be back at home, and they don't want that. Well, not really. It's not going to be back at home. Travis Lance is right there, but uh, they just don't want to get involved. So we see America join the war against Texas. America will also declare war on Central America in the South. However, they don't send forces down there. These guys don't send forces up there. Instead, Central America will also join against Mexico. And if you can't tell already, this is getting extremely out of hand. Everyone except for two countries is fighting another country. The two countries that aren't fighting each other are these two, of course. But we see Panama, or the Central American country, will be able to make a landing on Jamaica and to take over the whole island, hoping to use it as a kind of like defense or like something. They're hoping to use it as something. But we see that definitely backfires as they lose their navy back at home, which allows the Caribbean nation and their strongest navy in the region to invade into Central America and quickly cut the country into two, and they definitely have a plan for what they're going to do. Seeing as what has just happened at back home, we see we see more, personally, more invasion, or more landings are made. In total, we see three landings are made in the uh, Central American country. But then they will retreat their navy out of Jamaica, or they will retreat out of Jamaica. And the country that's probably winning the war the best right now is easily Central America. They have taken over the most land and haven't lost any land other than Jamaica, which they just got back. We see Mexico is able to slightly push out the Caribbean nation, however, although they still retain some ground. However, against Texas, this goes much better, as Texas, their supporter is kind of weak. It's still top 20 power, but it's kind of weak. And if you can't tell, obviously, we've got a proxy war going on here. This started off, these countries, other than the Caribbean nation, were just fighting on their own. And now we see there are six countries in the world which are helping out again and fighting in these countries. The first country we already know, Switzerland. I'm sure you already get in Switzerland helping Caribbean. I'm sure you already guessed the Great Lakes Empire is helping America because, I mean, they're allies already. Now for the others. The reason Mexico is so high on this list is because a former top one power is helping them, and that is the Great Empire. West Mexico, also once a top 20 power, has Ethiopia coming to their aid. Korea is sending their aid down to Central America. And the final country aiding another nation is West Africa. They feel like somehow Texas can win this war, although, as we're seeing right now, that is very unlikely. Mexico will continue pushing up into Texas. However, we do see a country is actually starting to do their own invasions. And it turns out there is actually a secret alliance going on. It's called the Anti-Colonial Alliance. And it is currently made up of, well, obviously, it's made up of post-colonial countries, but we see West Africa and Ghana are the two founders. We see Sahara, these three post-Dutch Empire colonies that are not in the Cross Alliance, and this is Ghana. This is not Ghana. That's more Liberia, isn't it? Or Guinea. That's what I meant. That's what I've been meaning to call this country. I've gotten them confused so much. But those aren't the only countries. As we see, Peru and Ecuador are also in this alliance. And the final country we come down here is this green tea. I don't really know. I don't know what to call that country, so there's a few countries here I don't know what to call them, so if you have a good name for them, go ahead. Tell me it in the comments. But let's move back into the war, as a country has just fallen. And if you had guessed that the country would be the Central Americans, well, you would actually be wrong. As Mexico somehow secretly sent some ships over into the Caribbean nation and have captured their capital, including some most of the Haiti area. However, this does not sit well with the country who controlled this area, who's definitely not trying to get their claims back. But especially after a small country broke away over here, they really don't want the Caribbean nation to lose any more land. I mean, like I said, they controlled most of the Caribbean. So we see Switzerland is now going to call the entire Diamond Alliance to send aid down into the Caribbean nation, and most of the countries do. Russia, Nordic countries, Dutch, North France, West France, the three Iberians, and Rome will all send aid out into the Caribbean nation, and this will come in extremely helpful. Oh, I did not know their capitals. Okay, what's news? But you see, the Caribbean nation will now be able to push out Mexico, they had initially fell, but now we see Mexico is redirecting their forces up north as they make a giant spearhead towards Texas. Texas has the weakest of any supporter, which is which is actually the 20th power. I just did power rankings and I didn't remember that. But that's beside the point. But this is this war is obviously going very back and forth, and we'll see this evolve in the next episode. However, I think we should move on to another episode. So we come down here for our daily Oceania update, which is actually taking place a bit further south, as we see a first war in actual Australia in a long time. We see the Green Australian nation will begin invading the red team. I don't know, maybe they see some use in the giant out back here, but we see the green Australians push up right through here, and they have some extremely good success. Down here, same thing. But the only reason it looks like it's going slow is because this is actually going quite slow because this is a giant desert. However, over the course of just like 3 or 4 months, the battlefront now looks something more like this. The red team has already been split into two, but now we see why I stopped right here instead of just seeing the whole country capitulate, as the blue team will be joining this war against both the red and the green countries. These guys are more purple, but that's beside the point. Pretend they were blue. Pretend I meant blue. Since they captured the entire South, and we see the Great Australian War starting to break out as this yellow tannish country will decide, I want all of New Zealand instead of just this, which is most of it. I want this little bit up here too, and they capture it with pretty much ease. We then see them and go up through the green team, because of course. And all of these countries except for these two right here are relatively equal strength. I would say the weakest of the four that are currently at war would be the red team by a decent shot. The red team mostly just owns outback land. Same with the blue team. Um, but the blue team has way more coastline and obviously didn't get jumped just a second ago. But we see the blue team will now begin its second invasion of a country as it decides to move its turns a bit south to the smallest of the nations at war. However, these guys are the the CL team here is actually one of the stronger ones. Oh, I just said that. But of the four, they are the second strongest, only behind the green country. Green country just had all its forces up here and fighting against the blue, which is why they're falling. But they have a giant population center right in here. Not to mention they have a decent chunk of New Zealand and Tasmania, so they have built up a pretty good navy, which has allowed them to secretly sneak over and make a landing near the blue teams, um, near their capital city. But we see the red team begins to push back the green team, mainly just because of their forces being so spread out. But also, the red team has decided to somehow make a extremely strong economy all of a sudden after I don't know how, but they suddenly have really good stuff, really good tools. It's like their economy suddenly went from 0 to 100. But instant after seeing this instantly, we see every country surrounding them is suspicious, and the blue team right here, after some troops passed through right in here, are like, wait a minute, we've seen this stuff before. A country from a country that has been here before too. Well, kinda. It's the same design but upgraded. And you know who that country is? Well, it's Sumatra. Sumatra once had a colony right here, but we'll go on to our very last event of today's episode, which is down here. It's not a map event, no, but obviously tensions are even still rising, and now with two major wars going on, countries these countries are putting a lot of troops on their front lines, or not front, on their borders, except for these guys who's just arming up their navy. But we see these these six countries are getting ready to go to war at any second. But that will do it for today's episode of What If Civilization Started Over. If you enjoyed, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.